Hey there, Sharon Horne-Ellstrom here. Welcome to day 309 of our BU 365-day challenge. To do one thing every day that improves us. Today, for No Nonsense November, today is day 5 of our No Nonsense November, where I'm just sharing one of the biggest life lessons that I've learned, the things that I've learned along my 62 years here on the planet that have helped me the most. Now, I'm not going to pretend I learned these the first time I heard them or even the 100th time I heard them. But when I actually had the epiphany where it clicked for me, that I was like, oh my gosh, I actually can choose this and I can manage my life or create the life I want because I now understand this is how the world really works. You know, sometimes, not sometimes, we're all born and we have to learn everything, right? Every single person, we come into life as a new human and we have to learn everything, right? We learn to speak, we learn to think, we learn to read, we learn to walk, we learn to do everything. And one of the things that I was exposed to, geez, probably whenever Tony Robbins started teaching it, the whole thought about the primary question. And I don't remember if it was in Awaken the Giant Within or if it was in, remember the 30-day tape program that he did. But wherever it was, he talked about the primary question. We all operate on a primary question. So what we're going to talk about today is questions and the importance of questions. And I think the month of December, we're going to do a question a day. I haven't decided 100%, but I'm thinking as I'm traveling, I'll come up with what I really want to go into. But I think that we need to understand the power of questions and that we're all operating on a primary question anyway. I think I've shared my story of waking up in the hospital after my sudden cardiac arrest, after I was unfrozen and woken up from the coma. And of course, the first thing out of my mouth was WTF. And I think we all know what WTF means. If you don't, please Google it, because I already used the Effenheimer once this week in my videos, so I don't want to get all carried away and sound like I'm a cursor. Because I do swear. I actually don't have a problem swearing in my personal life, and depending on the circumstances, but I choose not to swear online. Why? I could, but I don't need to. It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't do anything for my message. So why would I do that? So anyway, the whole topic, the primary question, I made this little worksheet today because our primary question, or 1 degree is shorthand for primary. Our primary question, and I'm going to share mine, and this is no longer my primary question, I'm going to say now. And our action item today is to ask ourselves and go about our day and actually figure out what is our primary question. Now here's a tip and a secret. If you are having a hard time figuring out what your primary question is, just ask someone close to you. My daughter, my mom, my sisters all knew what my first words were going to be when I woke up from that coma because they knew me really well and they knew I was going to be like, WTF. Guess what? WTF question mark had become, and it wasn't originally when I was a child. I mean, we have a primary question different times of our life, but during my raising my kids, building my businesses, working in corporate America all simultaneously, and being involved in a marriage that wasn't super good for me, WTF had become my default primary question. What happens when WTF is your primary question? Now, here's the deal. Whatever our primary question is, it's not inherently positive or negative. It's how we're using it that becomes positive or negative. And I was using WTF to think, why isn't this the way I think it should be in my mind right now? Well, what happens when you expect something to be different than it is? You get super duper frustrated, right? You get super duper stressed. What happens when something is never exactly how you think it should be? Because guess what? What is the probability that anything in our lives is exactly 100% how we make up in our minds that we believe or think it should be? Not very often, right? So that opened me up to be stressed out, frustrated, dissatisfied, unhappy, miserable most of the time because everything was wrong in my judgment of the situation. Now, I am proud to say WTF, once I woke up from the coma, quickly had to be replaced with something because I realized that what I was thinking, what I was believing, number one, all false beliefs, but what I was thinking, what I was believing created an absolute perfect storm and an opportunity for something really bad to happen to me. Well, what most people would consider really bad. Dropping dead is not usually on anyone's bucket list. So I knew pretty soon after I woke up from that coma, as I was trying to figure out what the heck had happened to me, that I had to do something. And I had to do something big. But guess what? It wasn't really that hard, and it wasn't really that big. I think I probably spent about a week doing this, actually. If I'm honest, the very first time I had identified what my primary question was. And I then, as I was going through my thoughts and beliefs and activities and experiences during the day, I would notice really like a light bulb every time my subconscious tried to feed me WTF, WTF, WTF. Now, everything in my world had been shooken up. I wasn't going to my business every day. I was doing cardiac rehab with a bunch of people that were like 20 years plus older than me. And it was very important that I realized I needed to change this question, and that I could. So I went back, I found my Tony Robbins information, I reread it and learned how to do this. How do you change your primary question? Number one, you have to have a different question to replace it with. So I brainstormed, and this is the part that took me about a week, is I played with different questions that could give me the results I wanted in my life, instead of always arguing with what is or what was showing up. Because arguing with what is showing up, what does that do? Creates more of that for us, right? And if we don't like what's showing up, we're just going to keep getting more of that. So I finally landed upon, for quite a few years actually, the primary question to use as, what am I creating now? Now again, what am I creating now turned out to be a really good question for me versus WTF, because if every time I heard WTF, I quickly substituted, what am I creating now? If I was thinking in or believing something that wasn't true, or thinking in negative thoughts, or falling into or being triggered by something, by asking myself immediately, instead of what's wrong with this, because WTF to me had come to mean, what the heck is wrong with this? Why isn't it how I think it should be right now? And I reframed those questions as, well, what am I creating now? So if I was feeling any negative emotion, I knew I wasn't creating what I was wanting. I was focusing on something that I didn't want. So guess what? I was creating more of that instead of what I wanted. So what am I creating now became a very powerful question for me. Now, I think I could probably use what am I creating now a little bit more in my life, because I've fallen into some kind of bad habits since the pandemic, like so many of us. So what am I creating now? And again, what I want to do what I did do as I was analyzing each of the different questions I came up with, because I can't even remember, and I'm sure I wrote it down somewhere, which I have no idea where it is, but it's in probably one of my, hundreds of notebooks that I have, because I literally have at least 100 different notebooks where I've captured information that I've learned. But I did do this, and I wrote down the different questions, and what I would do for each question that I was thinking about substituting my primary question for with the new primary question, I would ask myself, well, what are some negatives about this? How could this primary question work against me? And then what are some positives? Now you'll notice I have over twice as many positives as negatives, because I want to make sure that that question can be tweaked until I'm getting a lot more positive possibilities out of it than negative. What am I creating now? I specifically chose that because I wanted to do a couple of things. One, I wanted to remind myself that I have the power to create whatever it is that I want. So creating became an important word for me to include. And then what am I creating now, right this minute, because we can only create in the present moment, right? Is this moving me toward what I want or don't want? And creating now meant to remind me to be in the present moment, think about what the ramifications of and the results or outcomes would be if I kept going in this particular direction. Because guess what? I still get triggered and go in a negative spiral just like every other human being. But the sooner I can stop myself on that spiral and start backing it up and climbing back out of it, the faster and easier I get the results that I really, really want in my life. So today our action item is to think about and discover, if you've never done this before, it's like a eureka light bulb moment. Like, I was amazed that in my 50 years of life, I had never thought about or realized that this underwriting question, because it operates in our subconscious, was impacting me in such a huge way. but it absolutely positively was. And it was amazing how my life started to tweak and fall into place in a more positive way. And I started to create easily and effortlessly the things that I wanted in my life by asking myself, what am I creating now versus why don't I have it yet? Why haven't I created this yet? Why haven't I done this yet? And a lot of the WTF was comparing myself to others, thinking I didn't deserve or wasn't good enough, not understanding how and what choices and decisions I'd made along the way to put me in the position I was in right now. It's really frustrating when we actually step back, take a deep breath, and realize where we are right now is absolutely positively not where we want to be. And I get that way too. I mean, there's aspects of my life that I'm absolutely positively not where I want to be. But if I keep focusing on and beating myself because I haven't done something yet, or thinking negatively about where I am in that area or aspect of my life, guess what? I just stay stuck there. Stuff will happen that buries my feet and makes it impossible to move in the direction I want to go. So what do we do for that? We have the power all the time within us to change everything. We just have to believe that we do and know that we do, and then start doing it by changing our thoughts, changing what we're thinking about and believing, because our beliefs are just thoughts we've thought a lot or that got locked in when we had a significant emotional event, and we seldom question them, right? We just let our beliefs and our past experiences help us make decisions right now. And that keeps us safe, very, very safe in our comfort zone and alive. But are we really living, or are we just surviving and getting by? I'm going for thriving these days, not just surviving and getting by. I spent a lot of years just getting through the day. And that's not a very rewarding way to live our life. I mean, if I'm just getting through the day every day, my experience of life is that I'm just surviving. I'm not thriving. So, primary question, share yours in the comment below. I will think about my new primary question, what my primary question is right now, because I suspect I haven't been aware of it, but I think it's a little bit on the negative side because my results are feeling more difficult to achieve than usual. All right, any questions, hit me up. Otherwise, I'll be with you tomorrow. Bye.